Hey, what's up guys, you Gypsy back here today. We got nice NPL week 3 for you up against Cheeseboy 628. So this match is a little bit late going up, so it's probably going to be a bit of a quicker narration than usual. But I will try my best to let you guys know my thought process as far as the match goes. Yes, we're facing off against Cheeseboy, and he's actually a guy we faced in the finals in season 5. So yeah, we've played him before, and yeah, he's definitely a solid player. He wasn't around last season. He's a really busy guy in real life, so he had to take some time off last season. But he's back, and he's drafted a pretty good team. It's very slow, bar Raikou and Swellow, but it's very threatening. In saying that, he has got some nice speed tiers in Raikou and Swellow, but yeah, having that nice Firewater, Grass, Core, and Manaphy, Heatran, and Among Us is pretty solid. And he's got Mega T-Tar, which is a Mega that doesn't really see much usage, so nice creativity on his team. He's got the Sandcore with T-Tar and Stoutland. Definitely interesting squad. Manaphy is a massive threat to my team. Manaphy has an amazing matchup versus me, given that Z moves are a thing. So that was definitely a pressure, I guess you could say, when building, depending on if you wanted to run an offensive Z move or Z Rain Dance, which could equally be threatening to my squad. So yeah, as you guys can see, it's his team to the right. I'm expecting something like Manaphy, Sylveon, T-Tar, Mandibuzz, and maybe Raikou to come. I think that's 6, I'm not sure. Either way, this is the team we're rocking this week. We have physically offensive Diancie, Stealth Rocks here because we will have we'll more than likely have opportunities to set up rocks with Diancie on stuff like Mandibuzz that is forced to switch out, fearing a Diamond Storm or Moonblast respectively. Moonblast still does decent damage just to flake T-Tar, even though Mega T-Tar is really fat. Spamming Diamond Storm versus his team is pretty solid, as he doesn't have the best rock switch-ins bar Donphan, which can be weakened by my other members and takes a chunk from Moonblast. Next up we have Celesteela, basically a mixed Def Celesteela, takes on Mega T-Tar, takes on Manaphy fairly well. This actually was changed from Substitute to Giga Drain before the game, and this is a set that we'll be able to put in the work. Yeah, it definitely walls stuff like a defensive T-Tar really nicely. Takes on Stoutland. It can check stuff like Sylveon with ease. Manaphy is taken on fairly well with Giga Drain and Leech Seed, provided he doesn't have Rain Up or something like that. I have EQ here to catch stuff like Heatran and Raikou that want to switch in. Mainly Celesteela here is just a really solid wall versus his team, and a solid Mon to check stuff like Swellow and Sylveon. Then we have Scarf Decidueye, one of my safety checks to Adamant DD T-Tar. Also a nice backup check to Manaphy, which is definitely a threat if he gets a tail glow up. I can revenge a weakened Manaphy with Leaf Blade, do a ton. Sucker Punch mainly here for a Manaphy in the rain, and as well as like a Sandstorm boosted Stoutland. It's also a pretty solid pivot into Raikou, as that thing is a bit annoying for my team. Then we have lefties trapping Goth, pretty nice Goth set, traps stuff like Sylveon, if it's not Baton Pass, traps non-Shed Shell, Among Us, takes on Heatran with Rest, can 1v1 Manaphy in a 1v1 situation, if he's Calm Mind, for example, because I have Psyshock. A pretty solid Mon here. Could have gone Trick, but I am expecting Shed Shell into T-Tar on his team, or Baton Pass into T-Tar, which could make Trick Goth kind of useless in that sense. It's a pretty nice way to remove stuff like pesky Mons like Among Us and Donphan, and like a defensive Donphan and Sylveon for my team. Then we have Scarf Landorus. Scarf Landorus is a solid Revenger to DD T-Tar. +1 T-Tar is a threat, obviously, as you can tell. Just looking at my team, like I would appreciate more than one answer. I have the speed here to outspeed a +1 Adamant T-Tar, but having my Landorus here with this speed investment guarantees I outspeed Jelly T-Tar, which is important. Superpower bops the T-Tar. EQ pretty standard. His team is extremely weak to EQ. His resist is switching his Mandibuzz, which gets you turned on out into Diancie. So Landorus has the potential to just win if I weaken his team, get up rocks or something like that. I can just win late game with EQ sweep. Explosion is essentially here as a last ditch effort against Manaphy if I'm really in a fucked position and I just need to get some massive damage off. Then we have my defensive Hariyama. his T-Tar is kind of walled by Hariyama. If it's a bulky set, I think defensive T-Tar is an awful bring versus me, and he shouldn't bring defensive T-Tar against a team like mine with Celesteela, Landorus, and stuff like Hariyama. But if he does, this will be a really nice way of checking that. It's also really solid on stuff like Heatran. I can take +3 Manaphy Scald even in the rain, and deal huge damage with close combat. That's the team. I'm going to jump into the match in just this. Alright guys, so we are back with a match up against Cheese, and as you can see, he's opted not to bring the Mandibuzz, so no EQ immunities at all, so EQ Lando looks to go in here. Depending on the Donphan set, if we get Donphan down early, Landorus can definitely put in some work mid to late game with the EQ. So I'm going to lead off with Hariyama here just to scout what he wants to lead out with. If he wants to lead off with Rock's T-Tar, which he has brought to multiple games this season, forcing it out with a close combat could be really clutch. Forcing him into his Sylveon or his Donphan to take that damage could really put us in a solid position. And if he does want to lead with Donphan, I can fake out and scout his investment to sort of more easily determine what sort of set his Donphan is. So I'm going to lead off with my Hariyama here, as he does lead off with Donphan. I'm going to go for the fake out here, and that damage reveals that he is max HP, but not like max defense or anything like that. So he could potentially be a Self Vest. He may be an offensive variant, but I feel as though versus my team, he definitely wants a Diancie, like a nice Diancie response. If he is an Assault Vest Donphan, then he can actually take Diancie on pretty well. So I'm going to go for close combat here, just to scout. He may want to get up his rocks with Donphan if he is a rocking, like a Spidef rocker. So going for close combat here allows me some crucial damage. I do risk my Hariyama taking some damage, which could be kind of bad, because late game I might need it for stuff like Raikou, Manaphy, even the T-Tar, but I felt at this point in the game that he would go for rocks here. I do have Landorus, I do have Celesteela, I have a Decidueye who could potentially be a defensive Defogger. I don't believe rocks EQing is the play here at all from my opponent, but if he does want to go for Stealth Rocks, then I can get a nice free close combat off here. But you're going to see I go for close combat. We do 45, so it is a 2 KO, as my opponent is going to go for the Earthquake. So it worked out for him, but I really disagree with that play there. Had I gone out into Decidueye, then he could have lost a ton of momentum if I was Energy Ball or something like that. Had I gone straight out to Landorus or Celesteela, I may have been setup variants and been able to set up in his face, gaining a lot of momentum on his EQ, but it worked out for him, so I can't really say much there. My Hariyama will be able to take an Ice Shard from this range of health. 13.7% was, I believe, the max roll of an Ice Shard at -1 defense, so we are going to be able to take out this Donphan here, as we do live on 1%. So he gets a very high roll on that Ice Shard, but we are able to take him out. That Earthquake and Ice Shard damage reveals that he was definitely an invested Donphan, so he was an offensive, like a bulky offensive Donphan, so interesting bring. He's going to bring in his Raikou here, and I can kind of save Hariyama as sort of sack fodder. May potentially be able to get a fake out off versus Raikou or Manaphy later on, or even just to stall out a Sunkern. Having Hariyama in the back might be nice. But I am going to go out to Decidueye on this Raikou just to scout what sort of investment he has, what move he wants to go for. If he's choice locked, he may have opted to go for Volt Switch there. But he does go for the Thunderbolt this turn, and I am going to just U-turn out with my Decidueye here. If he's a choice locked variant, he's more than likely going to switch. And if he doesn't switch and stays into Shadow Ball, I will get some valuable information. Or HP Ice if he's fearing my Landorus coming in. I'm just going to sack off my Hariyama, as he does go for the Volt Switch. So whilst I do lose a nice sack in the back of Hariyama, I did gain some valuable information on his Raikou, and I also gain Switch Initiative here, as I can bring out my Diancie on the Sylveon. Now, the reason I go into Diancie here over something like Celesteela is that if he's Baton Pass Sylveon, he gets to switch right back out into his Raikou, which forces in either my Decidueye or my Landorus on a Volt Switch, which grants him momentum into his Tyranitar. And if he's Pursuit Tyranitar, which I do expect him to be this match, he can potentially trap my Decidueye. And I also, if I go Landorus instead, I risk playing games with HP Ices. So I felt like going into Diancie here, getting off a clean max attack Diamond Storm will allow me to gauge what sort of Sylveon he is. It'll also allow me to get some clutch damage off here on the Sylveon. If he's a bulky, like max defense variant, I can wear it down, force him to wish, get up my rocks potentially, which are looking to be pretty important for Landorus to potentially sweep with EQ later on. But here I am going to go for the Diamond Storm here, and it is going to do a chunk to the Sylveon, but he does only take 47. Now this means that he's a max defense variant, so that's important to know. This is more than likely his designated Deancey check, considering that Donphan was offensive. So we take given our HP investment, we take it's a 32% chance to echo with Hyper Voice. So the odds are well and truly in our favor to be able to easily take 2. But my opponent is going to crit me here with the Hyper Voice, and that puts Deancey at a range of health where it obviously can't live another. Very, very unfortunate. 6 turns into the game and we're already getting some crits, but that's Mons. It happens. Not Cheese's fault at all, but it is frustrating because this means that Deancey will not be able to force Sylveon into a range where it needs to wish. Force it into a range where if it doesn't wish, it dies to an EQ from Landorus, because Sylveon can live in EQ at this range of health after lefties. And it does also mean that I won't be able to get my rocks up on his likely wish, so that's definitely unfortunate. I am forced to switch out here, and he now is in the position where he can make the play of switching out, because I'm obviously not going to stay in here and sack off my Deancey if I can help it. It's one of my best ways of checking Manaphy. If he's Calm Mind, I can fire up a Diamond Storm. I can check it late game if I need to. It's a good way of pressuring T-Tar. Obviously Raikou outspeeds me, but keeping Deancey is definitely important for me, and that crit allows him to play around me needing to switch out here with Deancey, so that's important. I am going to switch out to my Celesteela here, as I don't want to risk anything else taking another Hyper Voice, as he makes the switch out into his Tyranitar. So this switch on his behalf signaled to me that his Tyranitar must be offensive. Reason being, you don't switch a defensive Tyranitar in on a bulky Celesteela, because you're just going to get leech seeded, worn down with heavy slam, and 1v1'd essentially, even if I was a max Bidef variant, which I'm not. So this made me believe that he was more than likely an offensive Dragon Dance variant, which could take heavy slams from my Celesteela fairly well. Even if I am mixed defensive, he can Dragon Dance, get a couple of Dragon Dances up, and really weaken me with a Stone Edge or a Fire Punch or a Thunder Punch, making Manaphy's life easier down the track if it does want to sweep my team with Rain Dance or Tail Glow. So I felt as though he definitely would be a offensive variant of Tyranitar, as like I said, if he even does stay in here with his Tyranitar versus my Celesteela, then he's more than likely going to be setting up or just firing off a powerful Stone Edge, as defensive Celesteela comfortably takes on this Tyranitar. So that being said, I am going to make the switch out to my Scarf Landorus, knowing that I will be able to get the Intimidate drop off if he does want to go for something like Stone Edge or Thunder Punch or Fire Punch. And if he wants to Dragon Dance up, I can potentially nab a kill with Scarf Superpower, or at bare minimum force him out, which is important. But I'm going to make the switch out to my Landorus here, and Cheese is actually going to go Mega Evolve and click Ice Punch. Now, that damage from his Tyranitar reveals that he's not adamant and he's not max attack. So damage on this Tyranitar later on in the game will determine that he's actually a defensive set. So this was quite a high roll with the Ice Punch here on my Landorus, but more importantly, he actually clicked Ice Punch versus a Celesteela. So this was interesting. I don't think that was a read, because Celesteela had no business like switching out there. Like, I could have just Leech Seeded, even gone for the Heavy Slam. Ice Punch would have done like 17 or 20% to my Celesteela. I would have got it all back with Leech Seed plus leftovers, and he would have been left in a position where Celesteela would comfortably take it on. Going Landorus also covered him going hard Raikou, because Raikou takes on Celesteela quite nicely. If I do go for Heavy Slam, he resists it. If I do go for Leech Seed, then it's not really any skin off his back. He can just start pressuring me with Thunderbolts. But he does go for the Ice Punch. I really don't understand it. I'd be really curious to hear Cheese's perspective on why he decided to click that versus Celesteela. But anyway, it worked out for him. So here, this is an interesting spot because I can obviously go for the U-turn, expecting him to switch out. I can go for Earthquake here, but it definitely won't kill Megatar. You know, even if he wasn't full like max HP and defensive, it wouldn't. Even if he was just like fully offensive, it wouldn't kill. So Superpower is the play here. But you know, I could go for U-turn, trying to be risky and trying to like, you know, predict him to switch out to a Sylveon or something on my Superpower, sacking it off to a potential Earthquake. But the fact that this is a bulky T-Tar and the fact that he has Baton Pass leads me to believe this probably has Pursuit. Now, the play from his side, if he does not expect me to have Superpower, or if he just expects me to U-turn or Earthquake, is to click Pursuit here, because that removes a potential Scarf Landorus, which is such a massive threat versus his team. Scarf Landorus can, you know, clean up Sylveon. Obviously, Oko has Raikou, really dense Manaphy, and revenges it if it's weakened. So it's kind of a 50-50 of sorts here. If he does have Pursuit, I feel like his play is to go for it. If he doesn't expect me to have Superpower, which I may not, because Earthquake still does a ton to Tyranitar, so a bit of a tricky turn here. He is going to make the safe play and go out to Sylveon, as I do fire for Superpower. I felt like going for Superpower there gained me more than going for U-turn. On the off chance that he did click Pursuit there, I lost my Landorus, I lost one of my great revenge tools versus his team, and that was not something I could afford at this point in the game. So Superpower was my play there. Also does reasonable damage to Sylveon, and I am just going to hard switch out this turn and go out into my Celesteela. At that point in the match, he also didn't know that I was Scarf Landorus. That damage didn't tell him anything. In fact, he may have thought I was like a bulky SD variant or a Rock Polish variant. So going Sylveon there on an Earthquake or a Superpower didn't like award him too much momentum in that sense. Like he may have expected me to go for Superpower, then Earthquake or U-turn or something there. So, but the fact that I switched out kind of implies that I am Scarf. So he has that information after that play, as he's going to make the obvious Baton Pass play out there, expecting me to be Scarf now. And as my Celesteela is going to come in, he's going to go out into his Raikou. So this is interesting. His Raikou is not lefties, so judging by the earlier damage on Decidueye, I have determined that he's a Magnet or a Zap Plate, a timid Raikou, so that's important. Definitely an offensive variant, so I'm going to have to switch right out here, go out into my Decidueye. Could have gone into Landorus there, which would have given me, and I was very close to going a Landorus there. That would have let me outspeed the Raikou and essentially get a kill, because had I gone into Landorus on his Volt Switch, I would have outspeed the next turn, gone for EQ, something would have died. He would have had to have sacked Sylveon and brought in either Stoutland, Undersand, or Manaphy there, so that would have been really nice. But I felt like he would make the play of going for Hidden Power Ice there, as it does do more to Decidueye than Volt Switch does, and even if I had brought in my Decidueye, he could just Volt Switch out the next turn, going out into his Tyranitar. So I felt like Hidden Power Ice was the play and he'd make it. I didn't think he'd want to give Landorus a free switch in there, as the fact that I switched out versus Sylveon kind of implied that I was Scarfed, but he does go for the Volt Switch here, as he is now going to be able to go hard out into his Tyranitar. So he does also achieve trapping my Decidueye, which is nice for him. But this Leaf Blade damage that I get off with my Decidueye is going to be important for Landorus' Earthquake later on. So Leaf Blade does 39 to T-Tar. So T-Tar is just chewing hits. T-Tar is ridiculously fat, but an offensive variant takes far more from Leaf Blade. So that damage told me that he was definitely a defensive Tyranitar. So I think it's a very interesting bring, and I'm very curious to hear his reasons for why he brought it this match. But that is going to take out my Decidueye there. Had I gone for U-turn, I would have done less damage. I would have been forced to have... I would have been forced to take the Pursuit there, as I did feel like that was coming, just the way he brought it in versus my Decidueye, who I'd shown to be Scarfed. As Landorus is going to come out here, I can just click Earthquake this turn, as Landorus is in range of an Earthquake, as Sylveon is going to drop here. So he sacked off Sylveon, as Stoutland is going to come in here. Now I'm going to go onto my Celesteela here, knowing I can take even a Wild Charge comfortably, and if he goes for Wild Charge and he's banned, I can just switch back out into my Landorus and get a kill, or 2-KO Manaphy on the switch in. But he's going to go for the return here, so that's a banded return, judging by the damage on my Celesteela. So that's good to know. He's adamant banned, and here I'm at a range of health where I really can't just throw out a Leech Seed. Like if he goes out into Raikou on my Leech, I can, I'm forced to switch obviously, but I have Landorus in the back, so that creates mind games with Thunderbolt and Hidden Power Ice. If I go EQ here on his incoming Raikou, he could definitely take some nice damage. He could take around 50% from an EQ. But really clicking Leech here is a no drawback play. Him staying in with Stoutland doesn't make a lot of sense either. I feel as though, like, if anything, he'd want to switch out into Raikou here, predicting me to just go for the Leech Seed. The damage on his Celesteela should have told him that I'm a defensive set, so Stoutland staying in versus my Celesteela will only lead to him getting worn down and me getting all my health back with Leech Seed. Potentially setting up to, if I'm some sort of autonomized set, as I've only, at this point, I don't even think I've shown a move on this set. Yeah, I haven't actually attacked at this point with my Celesteela, so he doesn't know if I'm special or physical or anything. He just knows that I'm bulky after that return damage. So right here, I'm going to make the double out into my Landorus, expecting his Raikou to come in. This was a play I felt he should make. I don't think staying in here and returning awarded him too much, because me cooking Leech Seed here really is like kind of risk free. Like, for all he knows, I may have Leech Protect, which is really nice versus his last few mons. Getting a Leech off on Manaphy ensures that I can take it on easier with my Gothitelle, with my Diancie, just having its Leech Seed health chipped down by the Leech Seed. So yeah, me going for Leech here makes a lot of sense. Therefore, I do expect him to make the aggressive play of switching out to Raikou here, especially given how aggressive he's been playing with his Tyranitar. He made the Ice Punch play earlier versus my defensive Celesteela, as I switched out to Landorus when he really didn't stand to gain much from making that play. So yeah, Cheese has shown in the past definitely to be an aggressive player, and staying in with Stoutland here, whilst that is an aggressive play and clicking return, going hard into Raikou awards him so much more, and I expect him to make that play. So I'm going to switch out to Landorus here. Him going out to Raikou there, as I make the switch out to Landorus, also gave me, it was a very high risk but immensely high reward play for me, because I then netted a kill. He then had to sack Stoutland, he had to sack T-Tar and revenge with Stoutland, or he had to sack Manaphy to 2 Earthquakes. So if he had switched out to Raikou there, it would have gained me a fantastic position in this match. But as you can see, Cheese does stay in and return the Celesteela slot that my Landorus was in. So very interesting play. I don't think like he read me really, like because I could have just clicked Leech Seed and stalled this Stoutland out, but he made the aggressive play, and it worked out for him. I think Raikou was a better aggressive play, because it would have put him in a really solid position versus my Celesteela. But in saying that, it worked out for him, so there's nothing I can really say about that. I am just going to go for the Earthquake this turn, expecting him to make the Raikou switch on my Leech Seed. But he goes out to Manaphy instead. Had I gone for Leech Seed there, then my Celesteela could have fired off 2 Giga Drains whilst tanking the Hydro Vortex, and taken out this Manaphy actually after 2 rounds of Leech Seed plus 2 Giga Drains. So he's going to go into Manaphy here, and he's going to set up the Rain with the Rain Dance. I'm going to do Giga Drain right here, and it does 30. Respectable amount. I'm actually out of range to die to a Hydro Vortex in Rain, because I am mixed defensive on this Celesteela. As you can see, Hydro Vortex is going to almost take me out, but Celesteela lives that on 2% as I do fire off the Giga Drain. I went for Hydro Vortex. I went for Leech Seed there in case he was a Calm Mind Rest variant. This would have allowed my Gothitelle to take it on easier. With the Leech Seed up, I can start Calm Minding up versus his Calm Minds. Potentially get the +6 on this Manaphy, and be in a situation where if Pursuit is his only attacking, dark attacking move on Tyranitar, I can 2-hit KO it with +6 Thunderbolt at that range of health, and he won't necessarily be able to OHKO me if my Gothitelle is at a high enough amount of health, which hopefully it would be in that Calm Mind War exchange versus Manaphy. But he is going to go for the Hydro Vortex here on my Leech Seed, and I'm kind of forced to bring in my Gothitelle here to take 50 from the Surf, and because we are like quite bulky on this Gothitelle, we will avoid the 2 KO. I contemplated Calm Minding up here and Roosting, and resting actually, given that I feel as though he has to have Rain Dance +3 coverage moves, but he eventually would have died to Leech Seed and his T-Tar would have come in anyway, so it wouldn't have really changed too much. I think I do just go for the T-Bolt here. Yep, go for the T-Bolt as Tyranitar does come in. I think no, Raikou comes in here, and Raiku's just going to be able to click T-Bolt 3 times and wrap up this game. Even if I hadn't got the crit, even if he hadn't crit my Diancie earlier, I still would have been in range for a Zap Plate Thunderbolt. So that crit wasn't influential in this end game. However, it did mean I couldn't bring my Diancie in as aggressively, such as versus a return from Stoutland. Banded return would not have taken me out if I hadn't been crit. It also let his T-Tar come in freely on my switch out to Celesteela, as we saw earlier, but it definitely didn't affect this end game. This was a Zap Plate Raikou, so yeah, this thing was cleaning up. Very nice bring, very nice Zap Plate bring versus me. I think that made a lot of sense. It cleaned up Landorus with HP Ice if I wasn't a Scarf variant, which I was, and yeah, Electric just did quite well versus my team that I brought this week, considering that I let Hariyama get weakened so early in the game. So yeah, a lot of things to talk about in this match, but you know, I don't agree with a lot of the plays that my opponent made, nor the sets that he brought in Tyranitar. But it worked out for him, and that's all that really matters, because he got the win, and we were unsuccessful this week, and that's just how it goes sometimes. So guys, make sure you go and check out Cheese's side of the game, and you know, hear his thought process throughout the game. I'm looking forward to going and hearing it myself. He's a lovely guy, and he's definitely a good player. So go and check him out. You won't regret it. So yeah, that is my week 3 match, guys. If you did enjoy the match, you know, drop a like and let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Next week we take on Monotui, who is one of the top 10 players in the format, no doubt. Definitely a threat in the NPL. He's a new addition to us this season, but he is he's definitely a scary opponent, and he has a very solid team, a very mono type team. So that's going to be a fun one. I've been putting a lot of work in this week building for that, so you can, yeah, I hope you guys are excited for that. It's definitely going to be a fun one. And that's about it, guys. If you did enjoy, let me know, and I'll catch you guys later.